Hello, everybody. Thank you for pulling into the Palmetto Pitstop. My name is Adam. Tony isn't here this week. I imagine at the time of recording this, he and my sister are likely enjoying their Sabrina Carpenter concert right now. But just me this week. I hope you guys are all right with that. We are going to be recapping the South Point 400 at Las Vegas. Congratulations to Joey Logano for winning, punching his ticket to the Championship 4, roughly 7 days after he thought he had been eliminated from the playoffs. Goes to show just how fluid these playoffs are in this current format, but we'll get more into that later. It was a huge race for playoff drivers in the worst possible way. Tyler Reddick winning stage one and then going for a crazy ride through the infield of Las Vegas. We saw he got involved, sent it three wide with Martin Truex Jr. and Chase Elliott. Looked like Truex was coming up the track. Kind of forced Elliott up as well, and that was when Reddick was already on a run on the high side, and not enough room on such a wide racetrack. Sent them spinning through the infield. Reddick hops the half-mile track, flips over, making it four, I believe, flips this season. We had two from Corey LaJoie, one at Talladega, one at Michigan. You had Josh Berry's scary flip at Daytona, and now Tyler Reddick. You also had Michael McDowell airborne, almost flipped in front of the entire field like Tony Stewart did in all those years ago at Talladega, but ended his day early. Chase Elliott, bad day for him as well, as he went, I believe, about 23 or so laps down to fix some damage on his car. Not a great day for him. Ryan Blaney was involved in that as well. Broken toe link, put him a few laps down as did the others. Kyle Larson ended up a lap down because of a bad pit stop, around lap 127. So just about everything went wrong for every other playoff driver, except Christopher Bell, finishing second, had a late race run there at the end. Tried, maybe if he had another lap, would have soared past Joey Logano, but clearly not enough because Joey Logano is the winner. And as I mentioned, as he replaced Alex Bowman after that disqualification, after the Charlotte Roval, has proved that Joey Logano is inevitable in these even years. I very much regret my prediction on not putting him in through the Final Four. I just didn't think about the even year thing. And it's proving to not just be a trend, but an inevitability, because he was all but his playoff hopes were dashed. He was just going for the the owners championship, I believe, and all of a sudden Sunday night he gets a call and, oh, you're back in it. And the next Sunday he is punching his ticket to the championship 4 at Phoenix. I don't know how you take NASCAR seriously anymore as a sport. This is very much an episodic event at this point. The championship doesn't mean anything anymore. The drivers, they straight up don't care. Joey Logano, when he was eliminated, said, of course, he cares more about the the owners' championship since it pays more. Denny Hamlin on his podcast, he said the same thing, where, yeah, he's going to try and go and win a championship, but if he doesn't, who cares? It doesn't mean anything. And it's sad, because these are things that this is something we put a great deal of weight into. Three drivers have their legacies made on the fact that they won so many. Richard Petty, of course, winning everything, 200 wins, 7 championships. Dale Earnhardt, his 7 championships. Jimmy Johnson's nickname is 7-time. Winning 5 consecutively. So these things used to matter. And Joey Logano could very well win his 3rd championship this year as a driver. And I don't think anyone's going to be putting him up there with the likes of the Yarboroughs or anything like that, the three-time champions in NASCAR. Calby Yarborough, David Pearson, Darrell Waltrip. I would not put Joey Logano in that tier, but, at the same time, he's a very talented driver. I don't blame Joey Logano for this, obviously. You shouldn't. He's played this system to a T. He's played this system perfectly. He knows what he has to do. He got his wins at Nashville in that 5 overtime race. He got his win at Atlanta at a drafting track, and now he has gotten a win at Vegas to send him to the championship 4. So he is not the one to direct your anger at, to direct your frustration at the sport. Joey Logano just knows how to work the system. Very similar to how Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus worked the system during the days of the chase. Of course, you win your races during the regular season, and then you save your best performances and cars and equipment and all that for the last 10 races of the year. And you can hardly blame drivers for doing that because teams are always going to adjust. I just wonder who the drivers would be standing out if we did have these regular season championships. Or not regular season, full season championships. Of course, there is the NASCAR Winston Cup Series Twitter account that's still keeping track of this, scoring it as though it is the Winston Cup points format. And it would have made it much more interesting, in my opinion, to have a full season championship because Tyler Reddick has been leading this thing all year, basically. I think he took over for the last who knows how many weeks at this point. Double digits at least. He's been dominant through the year. He's been sticking at number 1. And then could you imagine how crazy it would be if the points leader for a full season championship lost the points lead to Christopher Bell, who of course finished second, dominated the race, probably should have won it. And he loses that lead by flipping through the infield. That would be quite the story. Of course, you don't want these crashes to happen, these violent crashes. But thankfully, Tyler Reddick, okay. After that, we had an incident during practice with Ryan Blaney. He had a hard hit. He seemed a little dazed during his interview. But clearly didn't affect him. Even though he had his crash in the race, that put him laps down. He was right there to, again, be the wingman for Joey Logano because he pushed him right along Daniel Suarez and kept pushing as much as he could. So Ryan Blaney, if you're ever going to start up a race team and need a driver, you would want a guy like Ryan Blaney. But as I was saying, who really cares about the championship at this point? Doesn't mean anything. Hasn't meant anything for a long time. We've seen it where the the most dominant driver does win the championship. 2021, you had Kyle Larson, of course, a great season. Martin Truex Jr. in 2017, great driver, great season. But you have things like 2015 where Kyle Busch didn't even race for a good portion of the season, and he is rewarded with his championship just by putting it together a few wins and getting into the top 30. You have the 2020 season where Kevin Harvick was clearly the best driver all year, should have won the championship, doesn't even make the Final Four. It's really just something to make extra storylines out of. No one really cares. No one should care. It's an illegitimate championship. And at this point, it's kind of a tired debate because we know NASCAR is not going to change anything. The only thing you see on social media at this point, under every post, congratulating Joey Logano, posting the point standings, posting about the Final Four in Phoenix. The only thing you'll see are people saying how it's stupid, how it needs to be done away with, how we need a regular season championship, go back to the chase, whatever. And NASCAR hears it, but they don't care because people are watching. We have an increase in viewership. over the last year during this time. So I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I think they had almost 3 million viewers or over 3 million viewers, which is an increase from this race last year. So people are watching, more people are watching, and that's all NASCAR is going to see. They're going to see that more people are watching, and they think that this is what people want to see, and they're going to pretend that viewership numbers for these races before the playoffs were not double or triple this size. But that's just how NASCAR rolls. They want their playoffs. They're going to have their playoffs. And that's just, I think, the end of the story. But, yeah, I would love to keep going on it and keep pretending like saying something is going to do something. The fans have been very vocal. The drivers have been very vocal. But all that matters to NASCAR is what the ratings say. And the ratings say, keep the playoffs no matter how useless they are. And I know people are they've been saying, rules are rules, and that's the format they have. Stick to it, play by it, yada yada. And I think that's a really dumb argument. I think there are many dumb arguments to be made about the playoffs. To be made about this format in general. The rules are the rules, but the rules are stupid. The playoff format, I've had a 40 minute rant on one of our past videos. I believe the episode is actually called Adam Hates the Playoffs. I think it was when Harrison Burton won? ? I'm not sure. And just messed everything up in the playoffs. Kept a few good drivers out of competing for a championship. You had drivers like Bubba Wallace, currently 10th in points, very consistent driver. A guy like Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, these guys who are winning late in the season, who are still not in. But getting wins, being competitive, and still doing their best to finish as best they can and hope they make the playoffs next year. And it doesn't matter because even when a driver who's not in the playoff wins, all they care about is the playoffs. And you hear that week in and week out. Oh, Ross Chastain won at Kansas. Oh, he didn't make the playoffs. Let's mention that a few times in the interview. Chris Buescher didn't make the playoffs. Won at Watkins Glen. We're going to mention that a few times in the interview. It's very annoying. It's very stupid, but who cares? No one cares. Just enjoy the races. I guess that's all that could be said about it. But anyway, I'm going to stop myself before I go on another 20, 30-minute rant about how the playoffs are and my opinions on the playoffs. But like I said, overall, good race. Very entertaining. Christopher Bell, he has continued to be one of the best drivers in this playoffs, even though it seems like he keeps letting opportunities slip through his hands. He had that race a few weeks ago where, was that Kansas? It might have been Kansas, where he won. He was right in position to win the stages and then makes mistakes both times, loses the race. It just feels like he's right there, about to just finish it off. He's due for one of those races where he's just there the entire time, winning stages and ultimately winning the race. The number one driver right now, not named Joey Logano in the playoff rankings. Of course, you have Joey Logano locked into the round of four, the final four. Christopher Bell plus 42, Kyle Larson, even though he had a bad day, plus 35. William Byron, plus 27. And then the cut line, Denny Hamlin, minus 27. Tyler Reddick, regular season points leader, or points winner, negative 30. Ryan Blaney, minus 47. And Chase Elliott, I feel a bit surprising, even though he did have that crash that put him all those laps down, minus 53. It's a shame that two of those guys, Tyler Reddick and Chase Elliott, are some of the most dominant drivers this season. But they risk elimination now. I don't think they're in win now mode yet. Chase Elliott might be nearing win now mode because he's had some pretty good finishes. He's been consistent, but the guys ahead of him are more so, and they're winning races. His teammate, Kyle Larson, of course, has been on fire, possibly the best playoff driver thus far in terms of wins. Has had now two elimination race victories. Joey Logano, he also has 2 wins. It's been a postseason dominated by the non-playoff drivers for the most part. Of course, Chris Buescher, Ross Chastain, Ricky Stenhouse winning at Talladega. And now we go to Homestead next week, where a lot of the playoff drivers remaining were fantastic last year. So you had, of course, Kyle Larson was leading the race a lot last year, leading a good chunk of it before, trying to outperform Ryan Blaney, who was also doing very well that race. Felt like he had the car to beat, even though Kyle Larson was the guy dominating the race to that point. When on that round of pit stops, they both decided to pit, and Kyle Larson trying to gain time, fractions of a second on Ryan Blaney, entering pit lane, hits the tire barrier, and that ends his race. But he was already locked into at that point, so he can't be quite as reckless this time around because he only has a 35-point buffer, and the rest of these guys are pretty good at Homestead. Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, those guys are pretty good at this track. So Kyle Larson can't afford, I don't think he can afford to have a miscue like that this year. That would be devastating to a guy who has been so good at these cutoff races. And I mean, he's going to Martinsville. I said it when we made our predictions for the playoffs. I said that this round was tailor-made for Kyle Larson. He could win at any of these tracks, and I mean, he could win at just about any track that isn't a super speedway, it seems. And that's not even a dig at Kyle Larson. He just has not had good luck on these drafting tracks. I think this guy now, if you can hear him in the background, he thinks he's Kyle Larson with that loud car. Anyway. Yeah, I don't think anybody's really safe except your Joey Logano. Except if you're Joey Logano, you're not really feeling comfortable. You're not really feeling content. It's a long round, even though it is just 3 races. But anything can happen. We saw Tyler Reddick go from winning the first stage at Vegas to being upside down. So anything can happen here. William Byron, he's continued to be just consistent, not winning races, but being there when it matters. Thought he might have been able to maybe make something happen this weekend, but maybe not. Homestead, he's won there before. Not in this next-gen car, but he has won there. So he has experience. He knows he's going to get around it. Ryan Blaney, I think you got to keep an eye on him this weekend. He's not in must-win territory, but he's getting there. I think he has to go out and prove that he is the same guy who won the championship last year. I think he can. Like I said, he did very well last year. Tyler Reddick, the same thing. Denny Hamlin, the same thing. These guys are in the top 8 for a reason. A lot of these are super consistent guys. Top 8 drivers, I feel very secure in that. All year, minus Joey Logano, who's, even with his win, is still down in 15th in regular season points, but I digress. Christopher Bell, I mentioned him when we went into this playoffs, into this year's playoffs. I made that prediction that he would be out because I just did not see him being as consistent, and he's proved me wrong because he's been super consistent in these playoffs. I think he's been the most consistent in these playoffs. Gaining all these points. If Joey Logano didn't win, he would have been first. He could have won the race and won his way into a 3rd straight championship for, but I think he's probably a little more comfortable than the rest. If you have to pick somebody out of the bunch, Christopher Bell is really good at these next 2 tracks. So you would have to feel that unless something happens to his car or he gets caught up in some traffic, he should pretty much be a lock, which leaves Kyle Larson, William Byron, and the rest of them to duke it out. If I had to make a prediction as of now, I think I have a feeling that one of Hamlin, Reddick, or Blaney is going to jump Byron. Larson, I want to say he's safe just because he's so good at these next two tracks. But you have, if you don't win one of the next two and you get another day like you did where you have a bad pit stop that puts you a few laps down, these tracks aren't as big as Vegas. You're going to be in some real hot water. I mean, if that happened at Martinsville, for example, he's multiple laps down and he's never getting back on the lead lap. So his team's got to pick it up. Kyle Larson has been doing fantastic so far, but it's been up and down in the playoffs. I mean, he had a big crash at Atlanta, goes out and wins Bristol. He wins at the Roval, and then the next week he has a bad pit stop, puts him down a lap. So it's been up and down. I don't think it's anything to worry about, at least not yet. If it happens at Vegas, then you're really stressing. But the pressure is on, and this is when trash is made into diamonds, but also can make that into dust. So Kyle Larson's team, they should feel the heat a little bit after messing up his Vegas performance, but they have a 35-point buffer, which can go away in a heartbeat. So he has to be on top of it. His team has to be on top of it. Denny Hamlin, I feel like it's a kind of a surprise he's made it this far. Not anything towards him. Not anything towards him, of course. It just seems like things have worked against him this entire playoff season, and he's still somehow the first car that's out right now, that he's going into two tracks that he's good at. He's past the ones that are gonna come back to bite him. He got past that strategy at Atlanta. He got past Watkins Glen. He got past the Roval. He survived Talladega when he probably shouldn't have survived Talladega. And now he's at 3. He's going to have these next 2 weeks to try and get those points back. Whether he can do it or not is yet to be seen, of course, but who knows. But as I said, going into Homestead this weekend, I firmly believe this should still be the championship race. Phoenix is just not good. Old Phoenix I liked, but it could just be nostalgic. Just playing those old NASCAR games. I really love Phoenix. And I can't remember a single memorable thing at Phoenix happening in a good way. I mean, I remember Denny Hamlin pushing it too hard in the spring and spinning out. I remember Chase Elliott cutting down Denny Hamlin's tire. I remember Ryan Blaney being unable to pass Ross Chastain. But these aren't things that are like, oh yeah, this is great. But that's kind of a drawback with the format as well, because it kind of takes away from everything else that happens. All that matters is who wins. Homestead, I feel, just has much more of that championship atmosphere. Of course, Martin Truex Jr., he's running a throwback scheme this week to his 2017 championship. He won at Homestead. Kevin Harvick last year, he ran a throwback to his championship. There's just so much more that happened at Homestead, and I feel it has that historic significance over Phoenix that gives it that championship pedigree. I think it's the perfect finale track. I would love to see it go back to that. I mean, you have Tony Stewart in 2011, that crazy drive he made. Kyle Busch going on a run in 2015 to win his first championship. Ryan Newman almost exposing the playoff system in its first year of existence. when he almost won in 2014. A terrible season by his career standards to that point, and somehow almost winning his only, what would have been his only championship if he could have just not had to deal with Kevin Harvick that day. But there's just so many more moments at Homestead that I feel should be considered for the schedule in 2026. Put it back, NASCAR. Just make it right. Don't make it the mistake of renewing this deal or whatever you have with Phoenix. Whatever the solution, or not the solution, but whatever you have to do to put Homestead as the last race of the season, do it. That's all that matters if you get it done. But the Homestead, the race itself, last year, I mentioned it earlier, Kyle Larson and Ryan Blaney were the cars at the front. Before Kyle Larson had that incident with the tire barrier, Christopher Bell ended up winning. And that punched his ticket to the Final Four. He very well could do it again. And the top three that race were Christopher Bell, Ryan Blaney, and Tyler Reddick. Three guys who would love to have that top three. But of course, a win just takes all that pressure off your shoulders and lets you just ride around for 2 more weeks if you're looking for this championship. So, moving on to our prediction segment. I think it's a safe bet. I mentioned it earlier, or not earlier in this podcast, but a few episodes ago. You could just put Kyle Larson down for the rest of this season as a prediction to win, because Kyle Larson's always going to be in it. Unless something happens to him, something happens to his team, something happens to his car. If Kyle Larson can be Kyle Larson, not on a super speedway, he has a good chance to win. He did it, I believe, 2 years ago, 2022. Won that race. Was dominating last year. And he's already won 2 playoff races this year. So wouldn't be surprised if he punches his ticket to the Final Four, be the first Hendrick driver to do so. Kyle Larson's my number 1 pick. Number 2, go back-to-back Christopher Bell. Not a real surprise. Like I said, won this race last year. He's been one of the best playoff drivers to this point, just super consistent, not winning yet, but has made the playoffs, made the Final Four last 2 years. Wouldn't be surprised if he makes it another one in a row. Christopher Bell, he won it last year at the expense of Kyle Larson taking out some sand barriers on pit road. But Christopher Bell can definitely get it done. And then my final one, bit more of a Hail Mary. Gonna go with the nostalgia factor. I think Martin Truex Jr. has a good chance at winning this race. I know it seems that he's kind of checked out. His team's also seems like it's kind of checked out. They're kind of just turning laps, trying to get to the end of the season. He's probably putting all of his eggs on that last attempt at the Daytona 500. And it's gonna be a little bittersweet seeing that old paint scheme that he's running this week. A throwback to his 2017 championship. It's Martin Truex Jr. is one of the few drivers that, when I started watching the sport, it was his rookie year, and to see his entire career from start to finish and where he was when he won at Dover in 2007 and then didn't win again for a few years, left DEI, went to Mike Waltrip Racing, got that win at Sonoma to break the drought, and then just to go on an insane run in 2017 to be one of the most dominant performances we've seen in the elimination era. To still get it done in 2017 was a great run. He was actually the first driver, not named Tony Stewart, that I bought fan merch of. I have his number 56 hat in my closet here still. It was a very dedicated fan to Tony Stewart. So for anybody to get me to buy another driver's gear before Tony Stewart retired was pretty big. but it's going to be bittersweet seeing him on this track for the last time, and as his career, full-time racing comes to an end. It's been a great one. Surefire Hall of Famer, great driver. Hopefully in February, he can end that playoff or that Daytona 500 drought. It would be a great story for him to bookend his career with finally getting just a restrictor plate win. It's incredible that for all the talent he has, for all the races he's dominated, he has never won a plate race before, or a drafting track or a super speedway race. So I pick him this weekend. That's my third Hail Mary pick. Not really a Hail Mary pick, but you know what I mean, my little long shot. But as we move on from our preview of Homestead, now we take it into the final turn. And the final turn this week is really interesting because we were just talking about some nostalgia with Martin Truex Jr. We got Dale Jr. returning to the number 8 Budweiser Chevrolet. Now, if you don't know the news, no, this is not his return to the number 8 Budweiser in the Cup Series. He's going to be racing that particular paint scheme in select late model races. And the first one is in Florence Motor Speedway, the South Carolina 400. That'll be at the end of November, I believe. Would be great to see that thing in person. All the merch dropped today, and it felt like I was going through a time machine. Finally putting that number 8 font to use again. It's been so long. So long since we've seen that 8 font. And it's so nice to see. So when I got into NASCAR, it was 2007. It was the tail end of Dale Jr.'s time with DEI. He would be moving to the number 88 with Hendrick for the remainder of his career. The following season, and the 88 is really what I knew Dale Jr. in as I watched NASCAR growing up. But now, obviously, I have associated the 8 back with him. All the fans who own number 8 Budweiser stuff, playing those old NASCAR games as often as I do, you see that number 8, and it's an amazing car. It was so simple. And yet so wonderful. What a great design that car was. The red Budweiser with the Earnhardt E's on the end, or on the sides. And it's kind of crazy that Dale Jr. hasn't been sponsored by Budweiser in 17 years. Like I said, the last time he drove Budweiser was in 2007 when he left DEI. That 8 car. And still, Budweiser maintains such a great relationship with Dale Jr. I think they know that you could slap that 8 car anywhere and people are going to recognize it, people are going to love it. And I'm just the same. I did not truly appreciate that number 8 car when I was watching. I didn't appreciate it that first season of NASCAR because I didn't realize the historic significance behind it. But now, going on 17 years, or going on 18 years at the end of this season of watching the sport, I understand how important that car is in NASCAR history. I mean, they just to have Budweiser do that is insane. You know, to have they did that. They're doing this, of course. They are again sponsoring him in this late model car of his. All the merch is coming back. It's like it's like they had a bunch of stuff in storage basically, and they're just releasing it. It's like a time capsule. But they also released that that commercial when Dale Jr. was retiring. That I can't watch because it gets me emotional every time. Fantastic commercial. And at that point, they hadn't sponsored Dale in 10 years. Or in almost 10 years. So for them to just have such a respect for him as a driver, it really makes you appreciate that era of driver-sponsor pairings that has really gone by the wayside in the modern day. Denny Hamlin has, of course, spoken on this, where he has said that you need to have all these sponsors, all these different sponsors on board because it's so expensive to field a team now. I mean, if you look at the modern drivers now, there are only a handful that have signature sponsors. I mean, Denny Hamlin, I know him as the FedEx guy, but he's hardly driving FedEx anymore. It's mostly Yahoo, or it's Great Clips, or it's Mavis. Joey Logano is one of the few with an iconic sponsor with the Shell Pennzoil car. You have Kyle Larson, but he's sponsored by Hendrick Cars, so it's hard to appreciate that one when it's just your team, basically, your owner sponsoring you. You have Ty Gibbs. He's had Monster for the most part. Tyler Reddick kind of bounces around, but he has his Monster. He has the Beast. He has the Jordan brand again. He's sponsored by his owner, but gives him some nice cars. Bubba Wallace, he has like a few main sponsors, but they always rotate the paint scheme. So it's kind of like a toss up. Like, yeah, he has Columbia almost every week, but it's like 1 week will be a black and gold Columbia car, and then it'll be like a purple and white Columbia car, and then a blue and white Columbia car, and so on and so forth. So it's hard to associate him with one specific car look. I guess if I were to say which car I see as the default Bubba Wallace car, it would probably be that McDonald's, the black and red and gold. But it's other than that, I mean, Truex, he has Bass Pro Shops. He's had them for a while. But other than that, it's just that no one really has these iconic sponsors anymore, and I think it's a lost art because there was some real fan loyalty back in the day with these sponsors and drivers. I can speak from experience because I was one of them. Growing up, I never wanted to go to Lowe's because Lowe's was a Jimmy Johnson. It was Jimmy Johnson. That's his store. That's his sponsor. Whenever my dad would want to go to, whenever he would want to go to Lowe's or needed anything for the house, I'd say, no, let's go to Home Depot. That's the Tony Stewart one. I would associate these things with these guys. And I would go there because I would root for some guys and I wouldn't root for others. I only knew what a Jackson Hewitt was because it was on Greg Biffle's car. I had no idea what DuPont was for a while, but I knew it was Jeff Gordon's car. You know, as a kid, you don't know what DuPont does. There's a lot of stuff you don't really understand. I mean, how you get introduced to certain things could be through drivers. I've seen a few mentions on social media of how people didn't know what beer was until they saw Budweiser on Dale Jr.'s car. Some people growing up didn't know what Winston was. They didn't know it was cigarettes until they had to change the series sponsor because cigarettes couldn't advertise anymore, so they could no longer be the Winston Cup series. I ended up, when I was in high school, whenever I would need tools for stuff, I ended up going with Cobalt because it was, I knew it. It was name recognition. It was really good sponsorship because you would associate these things. And as an adult now, I like to say that I don't really, like, advertising really doesn't work on me. But if I see a nice car, I'm going to be a bit more inclined to either buy it or support it, you know? I don't know if seeing Mark Martin's Army car would make me want to join the Army, but if I see Kyle Petty's Hot Wheels car, I'd be like, oh, I think I would like to buy some Hot Wheels because Matchbox doesn't have a cool NASCAR. I would be inclined to go to Burger King because Tony Stewart was sponsored by Burger King and it wasn't sponsored by McDonald's. I would like to buy M&M's because Kyle Busch's car looks pretty cool. So I think that we have had an issue with a lot of things in NASCAR, and seeing iconic driver sponsor pairings is something that I think is a lost art in the sport of NASCAR. I would like to go look at a picture and point out certain drivers out of the field and be like, oh yeah, that's Denny Hamlin. He has FedEx on him. That's Christopher Bell. He has DeWalt. There's Ryan Blaney. He has Penske, or not Penske. He has Menards on his car. It would be nice to do that, but just with how expensive the cars have gotten and how expensive the sport as a whole has gotten, they need to get as many sponsors as they can. And it's kind of taken away iconic cars because it is now odd for a driver to have one paint scheme for the entire year. And they're not even called paint schemes anymore. It's wraps. But that's just how things are now in modern NASCAR. I feel like all I've done this episode is complain about modern NASCAR. But what I'm not complaining about is you making it to the end of this episode. That's all I have for you guys before I go on another rant. Thank you so much for watching, or listening, I should say. Be sure to, if you haven't already, to go follow our social media. Our Twitter, Instagram, all that. That'll be down in the comments, that'll be down in the description below. If you made it this far, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to leave a like. It really helps us grow, get this content out for more people. We promise that we are working on additional content in addition to these weekly podcasts. As we are coming up on the off season, we're going to have much more time to work on stuff for the channel. So it won't just be, obviously there won't be podcasts in the off season because there's no races, so there would be no podcasts. But there will be other things because we have some stuff on the back burner that we're really excited about. And we hope you guys are excited about it too. So thank you again for listening to the Palmetto Pit Stop. We will see you next week, hopefully again, back up to full strength with Tony back as we recap Homestead-Miami, whatever shakeups happen there, who's punched their ticket or hasn't punched their ticket or has been eliminated by points if something like that can happen. Because we do have some drivers that if they have a bad day, they're definitely in a win-in scenario. So thank you again for pulling into the Palmetto Pit Stop. We will see you next week.